Peugeot has always excelled at creating family-focused cars that deliver on practicality and spaciousness, and the previous generation 3008 certainly delivered in those areas. This car arrives with a greater focus on electrification than ever before, alongside a more tech-focused interior that aims to attract even the most eager of button pressers to its clever-looking interior. Well, in this video, we're going to be looking at the inside of this e-3008, its new electrified powertrain, and most importantly, how it drives to discover whether or not you should be considering this as your next family SUV. The previous generation of 3008 really wowed audiences with the way that it looked, and it seems that Peugeot has aimed to eclipse that with this latest generation car. We've come to expect some pretty innovative styling from Peugeot with its latest vehicles, and it's safe to say that this 3008 really lives up to that. It's a fantastic looking car, particularly when you see it in the metal for the first time. It's got an evolution of the 3-claw daytime running lights, and the Peugeot badge with its updated logo sits prominently on the front and on the flanks with the little shields too. All in all, it's a fantastic looking car, particularly for a regular family vehicle. Hop into the cabin of the e-3008 and it's a bit of an assault on the senses. There's a lot going on here when you sit down for the first time. We've got buttons down here, we've got screens in the middle, a big screen at the back. Initially at least it can seem a little bit bewildering, but fortunate enough Peugeot has thought it all out, and there are aspects to this that do make sense once you're more familiar with them. For instance, this screen down here is full of shortcuts for your separate and most used features, and you can change them depending on what you'd like to have. So for instance, you can put your assistant systems here, and that means you can switch them off pretty quickly when you're on the move. I think that this is really useful, and it means you don't have to delve into the main screen for the whole time, but if you need to, it's reasonably responsive and the graphics themselves are nice and clear. It all blends into one panoramic piece of glass, which then brings ahead of you your main display for aspects such as speed and range. I like that you've got proper controls for the volume, a nice little rocker switch here, and again that just makes it easier to use on the move. But of course, this being a Peugeot, we need practicality, and I think that the e-3008 does quite well in this area. We've got a large cubby down here through this split opening section, and I really like this hidden area down here, which, although the material is a little bit flimsy, opens up to reveal quite a deep storage bin with USB-C charging and a 12-volt socket as well. If you want to keep items out of sight, then I think that would be a really useful place for it, particularly things like sunglasses or your phone to keep it away and hidden. There's also a decent glove box at the side, and it's all trimmed and nicely put together. There is quite a lot of gloss black. As I always say, gloss black I feel cheapens an interior somewhat, but it's contrasted by this wool effect which gives it an element of warmth. Otherwise this would be quite a dark, plasticky place to be. But overall I like the combination of technology, and I like the fact that it has been thought through in terms of how you're going to interact with it. You may think that with its slightly coupe-esque roofline that the e-3008 wouldn't be able to offer that much rear seat headroom, but it's actually not too bad. I've got the seat in my usual position, and I've got a good amount of headspace here, although my areas for my knees are quite compromised. That's offset by a decent amount of space for my feet, so it doesn't feel overly uncomfortable, and I have got these handy cutouts for my knees which boost the space slightly more. Again, we've got these nice wool finishes on the back of the seats, and there are some handy nets here and some door bins at the side. We've also got ISOFIX points for each exterior seat, although the one in the middle doesn't get one. Overall, it's a nice rear seat experience, but it does feel quite dark and relatively cramped, even though the actual space on offer isn't too bad. When it comes to space, the e-3008 does well. In fact, there's 520 litres of boot space to explore once the electric door has opened. And as you can see, it's a nice square load area, and there's some handy under-storage space for charging cables. You've also got some deep pockets at the side for those looser items, and you've also got some 12-volt sockets on the left-hand side for charging external devices while you're on the move. This boot is a little bit temperamental during our time with it, however, and it does take an awfully long time to raise and lower. It's just one small niggle, but it might be worth checking out on your e-3008 if you are considering one. Overall, it's a very useful space though, and one which is more than on par with rivals in the class. Peugeot, like so many other manufacturers at the moment, is deep in the process of electrifying most of its fleet. And the e-3008 that we're driving today is one of the latest to receive battery-powered power. It's got a front-wheel drive setup with a 157 kilowatt motor planted up, driving the front wheels. And in total, Peugeot claims that you could get up to 326 miles from a single charge. How does that relate to the real world? Well, I'm at 83% charge, and it's currently showing 268 miles of range, which is a decent amount. So I think 300 is an achievable target, particularly in the summertime. I'd probably be looking at maybe 290, 280 during the winter, which is still respectable. That's a good amount of range to do some long distance driving, and means that the e-3008 isn't going to be hamstrung by local journeys or the kind of car that you're going to only have to use locally. You can take it further afield. 0 to 60 is dealt with in 8.6 seconds, so I'd say that's around average for this kind of car, regardless of whether or not it's powered by a petrol or a diesel engine. And of course, because it's an electric vehicle, you're getting that instant delivery of torque, which makes it feel a little bit keener away from the lights than a typical combustion engine vehicle. Something I do like in this car is the seating position. You're nice and high, you've got a commanding view of the road ahead, and the visibility isn't too bad. The rear screen is quite small, but these forward pillars are reasonable in size, and I've got nice big wing mirrors too, which help with visibility a little bit further. One thing I've never been used to is the iCockpit setup that brings this wraparound screen, but mainly this rather dinky steering wheel, which we've seen in cars from Peugeot for a long time now. I've never been able to get used to it simply because it just means that I never got a proper view of the screen. Regardless of where I put my seat, I feel like I can't quite see the dials or the full instruments. For instance, in my normal driving position, I can't really see how much range I've got, and in an electric car, that's actually quite useful to know whether or not you've got no range left whatsoever. The other thing about this cockpit is there's quite a lot to take on board. You've got screens and displays everywhere, you've got buttons and dials, and though I do like that you've got physical buttons for the volume, that's one thing that I always mention, there's quite a lot shouting out at you, and particularly when you've got so many assistance systems that you might want to switch off, like the excessive speed warning, which often chimes in when you're in a zone that it thinks it isn't in. So for instance, it's thought that I am actually in a 30 zone when I'm in a 50 zone, and to turn that off I had to go into the screen, which thankfully does have a shortcut button on this lower level. But again, that's something that takes 2 or 3 clicks on a screen when I'd rather just have one button to switch it all off. I think you'd get used to that over time with this car, but initially at least, it just feels a little bit of a pain. Hooked up to a 100 kilowatt fast charger, and you will be able to do a 20 to 80% charge in around about 30 minutes. So this car can accept those quicker rates of charge, which bring down those waiting times and mean that you're not going to spend all of your summer holidays sat at the charger. Of course, rapid chargers are slightly fewer on the UK's road network, but they are becoming more commonplace, and certainly 100 kilowatts I'd say is an easy one to find. Hook it up to a home wall box and you're looking at a 20 to 80% charge being completed in around about 6 hours. So when you come home in the evening, plug it on and you'll be fully charged by morning. I'd say that's pretty respectable, but reasonably similar to what you'd get from other cars in the market. What is the car like to drive? Well, naturally, it's very quiet. It's very quiet and comfortable, and it is refined. In typical Peugeot fashion, we've got slightly spongy brakes. There's not a lot of travel going on at the top of the pedal there, so I'd like there to be some more bite. But we have got regeneration, and I can control it via the pedals too. I can tailor how much regen I get depending on my situation. If I want the most regen, I pull the left paddle 3 times, and I get the most aggressive intervention of the regenerative braking system. When I'm on the motorway and I want more coasting, right paddle, you can bring it right back down again. So I like having that level of immediacy to the regen, and I like being able to control it when I'm on the move. I think that's really useful. Again, what you expect from Peugeot is a nice, comfortable ride, and I'd say that you're getting that in the e-3008. It feels a little bit fidgety, like your head's bobbling around somewhat, but those larger imperfections in the road, the creases in tarmac or the potholes, are being ironed out by the suspension. That's despite the fact that this car will still weigh a decent amount because it's got batteries underneath it, but actually it's dealing with those imperfections really nicely, and I'm also not getting too much of vibrations through into the cabin, because that is the only issue, or one of the biggest flaws with electric vehicles, is because they're so quiet, they throw up all the other inadequacies that you might not usually hear in a petrol or diesel car because they are softened by the vibration of the engine. However, you're just not getting that in the e-3008. It feels nice and quiet and nice and refined. Though I will say that these larger wheels and tyres are generating quite a decent amount of road noise. That said, even though it's a very windy day today, this cabin is remaining remarkably quiet. And again, that's something that just helps boost that overall feeling of comfort and refinement, and it gives it a far more premium edge than you might expect from a typical Peugeot SUV. I do actually think that if this car wasn't on 20-inch diamond cut alloy wheels, then the ride would be really, really comfortable. The fact of the matter is that car companies love to put big wheels on their cars, and they often design them to accommodate big wheels before they've even made them. That's why so many Jaguars and Jaguar Land Rover vehicles have always had big wheels, because Ian Callum used to love big wheels on his cars. But I think if you actually design them to have smaller wheels, then a byproduct of that would be a far more comfortable experience. This is a comfortable car anyway, but if you had smaller wheels on it, God, it'd be really lovely. But then, do you disagree with that? Would you rather have big wheels? Let me know in the comment section below whether you'd rather have a more comfortable ride, or would you rather bigger wheels to maybe impress the neighbours? The Peugeot e-3008 certainly has an uphill struggle in terms of eclipsing the success of its predecessor, but I feel it has all the tools to get the job done. It's interesting and technology packed inside. It's got a decent amount of range for this size of car, and it's also practical enough to slot into life as a family SUV. Sure, there are some limitations, and remember, you are going to have to consider how you're going to charge this car on a regular basis. But in terms of modern day electric vehicles that can slip in where a traditional petrol or diesel car once was, then the e-3008 makes for a very compelling choice. Do you like this latest electric SUV, or would you rather a petrol or diesel alternative? Let us know in the comments section. If you've enjoyed the video in general, please leave us a like. And since you're here, please remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you'd like to see other videos just like this one each time they come out, then click the bell icon. You'll get a notification every time we upload a new review.